All right. Good morning, Doug. We are back with questions from members of the phyle. Our phyle's our private member group. If you want to find out more about it, go to crisisinvesting.com. But before that, Doug, this day in history, what does the Encyclopedia Britannica have for us?
Well, several interesting things, no cosmic breakthroughs, but this is amazing that it was in 1977. That's a long time ago already on this day. That's 47 years ago. Am I right? Uh, Elvis Presley died and at age 42. And I think that's kind of instructive because Elvis, uh, with the help of Colonel Tom Parker, that was kind of a mixed bag relationship, but still, he drew himself up from being basically an ignorant farm boy who could only drive a truck to being one of the most famous and beloved people in the world. He had, uh, but how did he blow himself up? I mean, well, drugs, and I have no problem with drugs, but it's the problem I have with drugs is that they can be amusing, but they cloud your mind. So Aristotle had the Aristotle could have counseled Elvis and pointed out to him that you don't want to do too little of something and be ignorant of it, but you don't want to be too much. There's the golden mean, and Elvis went overboard. Anyway, uh, interestingly, his mansion, how's the name of that place?
Uh, Grace,
Graceland.
Graceland.
Yeah, it's he bought that for back in 1957. He bought that for about $120,000, and they guess that the market value of it today is about 400 million. But that's because it's an icon. Uh, it's a holy place on the one hand, and gets lots of traffic selling T-shirts and God knows what else. But even then, it's a huge place. It's like 15,000 square feet, and paying $120,000. Back then, the dollars were 10 times more. Still, that's only $1.2 million, which,
Hmm.
so for what it's worth, Elvis, RIP. Also, talking about these people, Madonna was born this day in 1958. And I've always been a fan of her music, as I am of much of Elvis's music, not all of it. And she's taken much better care of herself, although let's admit it, Mae West lived to a ripe old age and kept performing because she liked it. Maybe Madonna does too, but Madonna's got some admirable traits in addition to some stupidities, like she's into Kabbalah and leftist causes and so forth. So
Yeah, it is a little weird when she's up on stage being overly sexual at this point in her life. It's a little demeaning, I think.
it is. It's unseemly. There's a time and a place for everything in your life, and uh, also Idi Amin died on this day in 2003, and he may be the most famous single African dictator. But there have actually been dozens of guys in Africa that have been at least as nasty and criminal and murderous as Edie has been in all kinds of weird countries that people don't even know exist. But I guess Edie became famous for what he did just because he was a big guy. He was like 6'5",
Hmm.
300 pounds. He was a boxer. One thing I remember, an anecdote, was Muhammad Ali had dinner with him one time.
Hmm.
And Ali said he was actually afraid. He was afraid that because Edie was so flaky and unstable, Ali was afraid that he might not walk out of there.
Really?
Kind of interesting, I thought. Anyway, he
Well,
died. Idi Amin died in Saudi Arabia where he ran away to.
I mean, he had the image of the African dictator. Like, isn't he like the stereotypical thing now? You know, he's got the military uniform, the sunglasses, all
Yeah,
that.
no, Idi pretty much had it down. There's no question about it. And he was a big guy, bigger than life. Everybody likes that kind of thing. So that was 20 years ago that he kicked the bucket. And also, interestingly, Babe Ruth died today at age 53 in 1948.
Hmm.
And kind of interesting that, Babe Ruth, one of the greatest baseball athletes of all time, but he was kind of a fat little butterball, didn't have any of the conditioning that athletes today have. And he died at age 53. So it's kind of interesting to observe.
Interesting.
Yeah, it actually is. What would Babe Ruth have done if he'd been born in today's world with modern conditioning, knowledge, and technology?
Hmm.
Who knows? And last, I've got here Margaret Mitchell died in 1949 at age 49. And of course, she's famous for having written Gone with the Wind,
Oh yeah.
which to this day, I think is one of the biggest selling or novels in all of history.
Really?
It was at one time, I think.
It's amazing how all these people died so young.
It is indeed, yes. But
Yeah.
Margaret Mitchell, if she wrote that novel today, it couldn't be published. And certainly the movie, which was a great movie, couldn't be made because it portrayed the Old South as kind of a lost cause. Not such a bad place after all.
Right. Well, we live in a world where there's good and evil only, and there's no humanity in between. So it wouldn't
No,
survive today.
no, this not. Anyway, I liked the movie, haven't read the book, but Sic Transit Gloria Mundi.
Hmm. All right. Well, let's get to some of these questions. I think the first thing that comes up from somebody is about Kamala's plan to tackle what she calls price gouging. So she has a plan to implement federal prohibition on corporate price gouging for groceries in particular. And she highlights the meat industry as a significant contributor to rising grocery bills. She says that those things costs are up like 50% since the start of the pandemic. And she says that it's because of corporations, greedy corporations going after it. So basically, you predicted long ago, there will be price controls. Price controls will come. Seems to be that we're on the verge of that happening. What does that mean for America?
Listen, who knows how this election is going to turn out? Who knows, for that matter, if the Democrats won't dump her in the next few days at the anything can happen. It's an unstable world we live in. But God forbid she's the she and that bozo that she selected for vice president. Uh, I mean, this is a person of low intelligence, very low general knowledge, uh, a malign philosophy, poor moral character. I mean, could you choose a worse candidate for president? And she'll try to do all this stuff. So, well,
Well, and a lot of people don't know. They look at the price controls. They go, "Oh yeah, this stuff is expensive. The prices should be lowered," but they'll fall for it.
I'm afraid Americans have no basic understanding of economics. And if she succeeds in putting on price controls, uh, it's it's going to create shortages. It's going to create general economic chaos. And that won't be all she does.
Well,
When
it is.
shortages are created, she'll probably come up with something. Well, these corporations should be filling the shelves. We should have a government food corporation to make whatever is missing. This can get completely out of control.
Yeah, it really could. And it's interesting though, them targeting the meat in particular, because we know that there's an effort globally to crack down on meat production and consumption. So it is interesting that the focus is there in particular in her,
Yeah.
that's right in her sights.
Yeah. Could it be a conspiracy or could it just be gross stupidity? Sometimes it's very hard to tell the difference.
It could be both, but she'd be leading the stupidity arm. But behind that, I think it could be a conspiracy.
Yeah,
It's a,
that's right. Well, Deagle could be right in the end. We'll find out in a year or so.
yeah, we will, unfortunately. Let's see. In the Michael Yon interview, he says that Doug, you and I both asked, what steps should an individual take right now? And Michael offered some great steps to take. He mentioned getting out of big cities right now, find your tribe of people that you trust in real life, choose a location as your Alamo, I guess he said. But he wonders if he offered any other surprising, unmentioned, or unique or specific steps in our offline conversations. I had several offline conversations with him. But was there anything that came out of that? Is there anything else that was mentioned more specifically that you got?
I don't think so, Matt, unless you can think of something in your offline conversations. And I guess we're going to get together with Michael down in Uruguay.
Yeah,
But I can pretty well anticipate what he would say, part of it, because he was doing this 30-day water fast in Okinawa. He's very into keeping himself in good physical condition. So that
I
would
think
be
that's
part of
that's
it.
a good one. Yeah, that's a good point. And actually, he actually just wrapped up 40 days and 40 nights, and he finished.
That is biblical in,
That's what I said. Literally.
well,
Very impressive.
yeah, very impressive indeed. So I think that's got to be a part of it. And I don't know what Michael's views on financial health are. Uh, Physical health comes first, obviously. But I don't know what his thoughts on that are. But I'd certainly add that you want to put yourself in the best financial and economic condition that you can while things are still normal. And this is the time to bring in the harvest
Yeah.
because
Well,
winter's coming. Winter's coming.
and speaking of the of harvest, I mean, he did talk about food as being a problem, and he mentioned it a little bit during our call, but he's mentioned it a lot of places otherwise. That he is really believes that there's a famine coming. Now it's hard to understand how that'll work globally and where it'll affect, and but he does see that you have to have food. So I think he would probably say as much as you can to either produce your own food, just have a garden, if nothing else, and to get to know local producers. I mean, when we lived in Colorado, we bought our beef from a local rancher. We buy half a cow at a time. So I'm sure that would be high on his list as well.
Yeah, that's very wise. And there are little things that you can do too. Um, like I uh, for breakfast in the morning most days, or certainly for a snack, I like to have a smoothie uh, with some blueberries or banana, but also some protein powder, very high quality. And I've got like a dozen canisters of the stuff that are put away. They'll last forever. I mean, the Mormons, of course, are famous for storing what, a year's worth of
A
food
year.
for everybody in the family. Not a bad idea, actually.
Yeah. Yeah, it seems like a smart idea these days. And if nothing else, it would have been a good investment. What was that guy you used to know who wrote a book about basically saying instead of saving in different financial instruments, a good way to save could be buy all the
Ah,
things that you know you're
yes,
going to
that,
need.
that was my old friend Jack Pugsley. Some of the listeners might remember Jack, super guy, and he wrote a book called The Alpha Strategy, which I'm sure you can get as a used book on Amazon. And what Jack did was look at all the things that you need in life, everything from light bulbs to stored food to
Aluminum foil.
aluminum foil, exactly, all kinds of stuff. And he suggested that to buy a large quantity of these things, A, when they're on sale, because you get a discount. And if you buy it in quantity, you get a further discount, and you put them aside, they'll appreciate in price, and you won't pay taxes on that incremental increase, which is a plus. You have the convenience of having them there when you need it, and they may not be available in the future furthermore, and you will have them. So he built a whole argument and went through exactly what you want to buy, and it was quite a useful book. We probably ought to try to republish that. I think there'd be a market for it, although there's no money in books. But
Yeah, I mean, and it makes sense. I mean, there's been the official inflation stats, or at least, well, the true inflation, that that indicator, I think, counts it as inflation at 25 or 26% between 2020 and today. So, I mean, you would have gotten a theoretically 25% return on your money, right? By buying the goods that you needed then, that rather than say keeping it in cash. So it makes sense.
yeah, and of course there are things that always wanted and needed, like ammunition, alcohol, and tobacco, all of which have gone up a lot. And if you put them aside, you can store them forever. You've got them. A lot of things like that. So,
yeah. Okay. Another one relating to Michael Yon's interview. He said, I'd love to hear Doug's best guess as to how long we might have to get situated where we want to be to ride out the storm before it might be too late to make a big move.
well, once again, retro rocking to an old friend of mine, Harry Brown, when he wrote that marvelous book, How to Profit from the Coming Devaluation. Harry published it, wrote it in 1970. It's an excellent book in every way. And back then, he was suggesting that you have a second crib that you could go to. And he suggested that if it's in a nice place, a resort place, it could be an excellent investment. He was right about that, in addition to being a place where you could go to if things get dicey where you live. So, but that was, how long ago did Harry do that? That was 50 years ago, and the world has not fallen apart yet. So do we have another 50 years? Well, it doesn't seem that way, but how much time do we have? I don't know. My answer to the question is any time in between tomorrow morning and maybe 5 years from now at this point. I think it's going to be closer to tomorrow morning, though, because one thing that, especially if Kamala's in office, but the same thing if Trump's in office, these people are all dirigistes. They'll put on foreign exchange controls because we've got this time bomb of who knows how many tens of trillions, 40 trillion, I don't know, US dollars sitting outside the US, that really scary things could happen with that if confidence in the dollar collapses and they start coming home to the US. They won't want the average person to ship money out of the country. So if you want to diversify internationally, foreign exchange controls, which are very likely, will completely prohibit you from doing that. You should act now. I mean, there's no time like the present, frankly.
Yeah, and when people are floating price controls, you have to imagine that exchange controls are like they're on the horizon. I mean, when they start talking about these things, they go hand in hand.
It's part of the picture. When Nixon put on price controls in, was it 1973? There were also foreign exchange controls that he added into the package. So Kamala absolutely do that, or Trump is entirely capable of doing that too.
Yeah, I mean, wants to roll out all these tariffs, right? I mean, he did it before. He wants to expand those, and so yeah, one of the things when we went through Trump's plan, the 20 promises, core promises, one of the things we talked about was he wanted to make America manufacturing supreme, and some of the comments of the video were like, well, that's not really realistic. They're like, well, what's so hard? You just put tariffs on those goods overseas, and then they get produced at home. So like. That
Yeah,
was one of
pretty
the comments.
simple, easy
Pretty
peasy.
simple.
No
Exactly.
problem.
What's hard to understand about it? Good luck. Maybe in 1990, if they hadn't let China into the WTO, maybe then. But at this stage, I think people don't understand the depth of supply chain that is owned and controlled by China. It's not going to be easy.
Yeah, I mean, America could turn around. I mean, it could. I mean, the way you solve that problem and bring manufacturing back to the US is not by printing up more money and subsidizing people that you want to manufacture. It's basically by getting rid of all the regulations and taxes that stop people from doing things. People would prefer to manufacture here in America because this is where the consumption is. You don't have to ship it from around the world. And we have infrastructure in this country that makes it very convenient. You just have to get rid of the taxes and regulations and stabilize the currency. And this country would boom. This place would boom. But it ain't gonna happen.
Yeah. Okay. What does Doug think of the Wall Street Journal piece regarding the Nord Stream attack scenario? It says, is it credible?
Why don't you summarize that, Matt?
Well, as I understand it, now I haven't read the Wall Street Journal's version of this, but as I understand it, they're claiming that no, it wasn't the U.S. intel services who did it. It wasn't sanctioned by the U.S. government. And now they're admitting that no, in fact, it wasn't Russia that did it to themselves. They're saying that it was a private Ukrainian force that did it, originally authorized by Zelensky, but then said not to, but they went ahead and did it anyway. And I think that they claims they were on a sailboat and had just basics, just like a ragtag group essentially that executed the mission.
To me, it sounds incredible and really, really stupid that they'd expect people to believe that because those pipelines were, what, a couple 100 feet deep. That's serious diving. That's not
Serious
sport
diving.
diving when you go down that deep. And find them to start with and get the explosives properly to blow the. I mean, this is just further proof that you can't believe what you read in the Wall Street Journal. And it's better than most other papers in the US, but I don't trust the Journal at all. They've got the same crazy leftists under the control of God knows who writing articles for it. No, it's bullshit.
And the other, I mean, people who aren't familiar with scuba diving might not understand why it's such a huge issue to go to that depth, but you can't just do it with a regular scuba setup, right? You have to have a special mixing
Yeah,
yeah,
200 feet, and I don't know exactly how deep those pipelines were, but I've actually gone to 200 feet. I have, but only with a single tank, and you can bounce the bottom and come back up. That is it. So you're using double tank blocks at a minimum. But now, if you're going to be down there long enough to do anything, you're talking about mixed gases, and it gets very complicated.
Hmm.
So
And there were three different explosions that went off on two different pipelines simultaneously, or basically simultaneously. Like this is a complex operation.
capital intensive and expertise intensive. I I don't know. Could some Ukrainian peasants just wander out on a sailboat and do it? Well, I don't want to understate it, but I don't think so.
Yeah, I don't think so either. Well, I'm glad at least they're not blaming the Russians anymore. At least they've gone
At
away
least,
from that.
at least it's not the Russians blowing up their own pipeline. That was just too incredibly stupid. So they've at
But
least advanced a little bit.
it's, I mean, so many people believed it, regardless of how absurd it was. And I'm sure just people, scores of people will believe this, or tens of millions of people will believe this.
I read it in the Wall Street Journal. Of course I believe it.
Right, exactly. All right. So, the question about portfolio management, some of the stocks that you own, when they're beaten down, or some of the mining shares or like uranium, stuff like that's been really beaten down in the last couple of weeks, or do you take advantage of that opportunity to buy more, or are you just kind of holding with your current positions generally?
Well, in the first place, when I buy these crappy little mining stocks, and I've explained in the past why I say they're crappy little mining stocks, almost all of them, I almost always buy them in the form of private placements. So I generally get a discount from the market price, and I collect a warrant, which gives me much, much more flexibility and much, much more upside to start with. So that partially answers the question. And after, if it turns out that I'm wrong, I lose the stock, generally speaking. I mean, I like to, I've over the years, I've tried to get into the habit of not trying to pick a bottom, but trying to make the trend my friend. And if something's going down, that's probably because something's wrong, as opposed to it going up, which means I'm probably been right and I should buy more. So,
When you have situations like the last where there was it wasn't a flash crash, but a couple of really bad days in the market. And right before that, like uranium in particular, some of these uranium companies got really hammered in that time period, but that doesn't change your stance on, the bull case for uranium companies,
nope,
does it?
it doesn't. The case for uranium is pretty bulletproof, quite frankly. And all of these crappy little mining stocks, and there are a couple thousand, there's more than a couple thousand, there's a couple thousand that say they're gold companies. Uh, they last peaked in 2011. That's a long time ago. And they've been down to flat. Last 5 years, they've been flat. No, it doesn't matter what the market does, it's just flat. You have an occasional success, that stock goes up. And a number of them have gone up 4 or 5 to 1. And then some of them blow up and they they go down 80%. But we're at the bottom of the market as far as I'm concerned for these things. So that's all I can say. I mean,
Okay.
I'm
All
sticking
right.
with the program. I don't
All
know
right.
where else to be. I don't want to be in bonds. I don't want to be. I don't want to be in common stocks. It's the time to be in resource stocks.
Yeah. That for me, that and cattle is where I'm at.
Ah, yes,
Real
cattle.
cattle, not futures. All right. So Doug, looking at the what they call the rules-based order, it's what Anthony Blinken and all the masters of the universe that run our political system talk about all the time. The question is, what if they said, what is the philosophical underpinning of that? And the question is, what if indeed an Ayn Randian 100% self-interest oriented existentialism? He says, is that the same essentially? Is it the full extent of what Ayn Rand was talking about with a rules-based order?
Well, it should be the same, but the question is, what are the rules? And the rules that these horrible people like Blinken are talking about are arbitrary. They're made up. I mean, they're basically bullshit rules. I've said before, and Rand didn't say this, but I'm sure she'd agree with it. Uh, there are only two rules. One, do all that you say you're going to do. And two, don't aggress against other people or their property. That's a proper foundation for a rules-based order. But that's not what these criminals in government are talking about
They violate both of those all the time,
all the
I think.
time. It's just propaganda and PR when they talk about rules-based orders. That's they should mostly be in jail.
I think that's right. Okay, so a question of asset allocation. In hindsight, well, not really hindsight, but in anticipation of the Greater Depression, as you call it, she says in normal times it was recommended to allocate 25% real estate, 25% metals, 25% bonds, 25% cash or stocks. I mean, well, many crisis believers have changed asset allocations and moved their assets up to 80% physical gold and silver. Well, what do you think it should be in anticipation of the crisis? What should allocations be?
Well, I don't know, and I don't think anybody knows. And that 25, 25, 25 uh, allocation that she mentions, uh, that was, Wall Street says you ought to be, depending on your age, but 60% in stocks, 40% in bonds, and it changes as you get over. Okay, fine. That 25, 25, 25, 25 allocation. I think you're referring to what, once again, my old friend Harry Brown developed. He called it the permanent portfolio, because we can't predict the future, try as we might. And the key with Harry's portfolio was to say put 25% in gold. And let's say gold goes up 50% over the course of a year. At the end of the year, you sell enough of it so that it's still 25% instead of 37.5% or whatever it would have been. And what do you do with the money that you've taken off the table from gold because it's gone up? Well, you allocate into those categories that have gone down, relatively speaking. So you're kind of forcing yourself to sell high and buy low. And over time, that should work out. It's very prudent. So you can probably Google permanent portfolio, Harry Brown or something like that, and have a full explanation of it. But I think it's quite intelligent.
Okay. Next question. In the crisis of the 70s, 2000s, and 2008, many private and institutional investors used the Swiss franc as a hedge against global volatility. Then it was as good as gold. Even today, she says, a week ago in the mini Monday crash, we have seen some move in favor of the Swiss franc. Do you think the role of the Swiss franc, what do you think of the role in the next crisis?
Not too much. People forget that before 1971, I remember this very well, the Swiss franc was worth 23 cents US. Now it's typically over $1. The Deutschmark, which no longer exists, was worth 25 cents. The Japanese yen was 300 to the dollar. It was a different world back then. But these currencies are all just floating abstractions, and they're all in trouble. So the Swiss franc, over the last 10 or 20 years, they've actually sold a lot of their gold. They had, proportional to their currency, they had more than anybody else. They've sold a lot of their gold. And anyway, why do you want to have Swiss francs? It's just paper currency. And as an American, presume you're an American.
I know she is at least living in Switzerland, if not Swiss herself. I happen to know that.
That's good. Because an American will have a very hard time, and we'll have to be talking 7 figures, I think, to open up a Swiss bank account to start with these days. They just don't want your business. Nobody wants American business. It's more trouble than it's worth. Yeah, sure. If you're in Switzerland, that's probably the best currency to own. I don't know of a better currency, but it's still just a currency.
Okay. All right. What are your thoughts on lithium? Is the news of the slumping EV sales and the low prices actually a great buying opportunity? He shared a chart that just shows that, lithium has had a big spike up starting in 2021, had a big peak of, I don't know, over $20. Now it's down to 232. What's your take on lithium?
Number 3 on the periodic chart of the elements. It's kind of interesting because in high school chemistry lab, we'd play with these volatile metals, and the metals on the far left side of the periodic table, like magnesium. If you start a magnesium fire with magnesium strip metal, it's really amusing. It burns like hell. And then it's hard to start a fire, much harder to start a fire with calcium, but you can use the magnesium to start a fire with a little bit of calcium, and it burns even more. And then lithium is even more that way. So it's dangerous stuff, which is why when you have a Tesla on fire You just can't put it out, quite
Yeah.
frankly. So are they going to come up with a better material for batteries? Well, I think people are working on it all the time because lithium's got some disadvantages, big advantages, but big disadvantages. So right now it's cheap, and a lot of people have started lithium mines and they can't make money on them at these prices. Uh, I guess I'd be a buyer of a lithium stock right now if I could find a good one that's going to survive. Yes, I would. But
Hmm.
I don't know a good lithium stock. The biggest one, I think, is a company called Albemarle. I don't know if it has earnings at these prices or not. I don't know
Hmm.
if any lithium company, miner, has earnings at these prices. Have to look into it because it's crashed so much. It's probably a very interesting speculation, but I don't
Yeah.
know what the future for that is.
What's the name of that company? I'll look it up.
Is it Albemarle? Am I right?
Um,
Albemarle? I've never owned it.
yeah, I don't know. I'll look it up after because I can't.
Biggest lithium producer. Could
Hmm.
be worth looking into. Could be a good speculation, frankly,
All right, I'll check it out.
until the
Um,
technology changes.
yeah, and it will. I mean, like there's so much investment going into the batteries now because it's seen as just a gateway to so many other things, especially the whole green agenda, right, is being pushed. Batteries are the key to making it work. So there's a
Yep.
lot of investment there.
Yep.
Have you ever owned any rental property? And if so, where?
Inadvertently, I've rented things out that I owned, and I don't like to do it. It's it's an administrative pain in the ass. You can never be sure whether the person you're renting to is even a decent human being who will pay the rent and maybe try to squat in your property or crash the property or uh, so I think if you're going to be a renter, it's a lot harder than you might anticipate. In fact, I did have a successful rental experience. However, I bought my mother a house years ago in Arizona, and in order to be able to depreciate it, I said, Mom, you got to pay me some rent. So give me $100 a month and then I can depreciate it. So that was a rental experience that worked out okay. But that's kind of a special situation.
Yeah, it's weird that the biggest benefit in real estate is what your buddy Robert Kiyosaki talks about all the time. It's basically the depreciation value of it. It's not even the business itself. It's that you can offset other income by depreciating the real estate, right?
Yeah, yeah, exactly. And if you're lucky, maybe the real estate will go up, or maybe not. Maybe they'll raise the taxes so much, or I'm not a fan of it. It's not my gig.
Yeah, I don't like it either. I owned a couple of rental houses in Iowa for a while, and I was like, because that's what you're told to do, So I bought a couple, and I'm like, this is not. I don't, for the $200 a month. These are small houses. I bought two next to each other. They were like 80 grand each. They're so really cheap, But and a cash flow, maybe $300 a month each. But the hassle with
Yes.
it was unbelievable. I'm like, this is not worth it. And all
Yeah,
my accountants
you
always
don't want
said,
to
you
you
need
don't
real
want to hear
estate.
from these tenants who want you to come over and right.
No, and it doesn't generate enough money to outsource it to somebody else. There'd be no money in it. But again, the accountants always said it's for the depreciation. But that seems silly to me.
Yeah, yeah, I mean, it treated Robert Kiyosaki well, but well, he was serious about it. But it's not my gig.
Yeah. Okay, just a few more questions for you. What do you think of Alcor? That's the cryostasis company.
Yeah, I'm kind of familiar with it because I have a friend who was really into it, and the basic argument is this: is that when you kick the bucket or when you're about to kick the bucket, you have your head preserved, or maybe if you're a high roller, your whole body preserved. And then when technology evolves X number of years in the future, maybe 20, maybe 200, I don't know. They don't really know either. Then you're resuscitated, then you're alive again. So, okay, I understand the theory and it's got some appeal, but it gets into all kinds of philosophical questions. I mean, do you actually have a spiritual existence? And if so, well, these are unanswerable questions. So my
Yeah,
answer
and
to the question is I probably won't go that way.
are you sure that that world 200 years in advance is a world you want to be reanimated into? I mean, what's that comedy? It's Idiocracy,
Oh
where the
yeah.
guy, right? It's kind of that situation. He comes back and he's the smartest man on earth at that stage. But like, I don't know. Is that what you want to come back to? Do you? I mean, there's a lot of uncertainty in that approach. I don't think I'd like.
Yeah, in addition to the fact that, our old friend, the second law of thermodynamics, even if you're preserving your brain and it's everything deteriorates over time. So you're going to come back, you may not be yourself anymore. In fact, you may be a blithering idiot with the natural deterioration of your brain.
Seems risky. Of course,
Risky. Yeah.
I guess so is death, as for some, might consider that
Yeah.
risky.
Yeah. I think there's better ways to confront the ultimate problem than that one in particular.
So I was just looking up this Albemarle, and apparently they do have some earnings, but it's according to Seeking Alpha, it's still trading at a PE of 86, even though it's down 56% in the last year.
Hmm. Yeah. Probably I'll pass or look for some weird little stock that's a special situation that's got a lithium deposit, but
Yeah, I'll look around it some more.
yeah,
Yeah, that doesn't sound like it. That doesn't sound like value, not to me.
not really, no.
Okay. Next question is they'd like to hear, Doug, they'd like to hear you talk more about your background as a speculator. They recall you discussing your first big win in South African gold plays. Was that enough for you then to get into it full time and parlay that into the newsletter business? Or was there a lot more in between?
Oh, there had to be more because I didn't have enough money then to buy enough of those stocks to, I mean, it made a big difference, but retirement money, no, you got to start. It doesn't matter if you get 10 to 1. I mean, if you get 10 to 1 on $10,000, you still only got $100,000. So you've got to do more. So many things, so many good times, and so many blow-ups and mistakes. I mean, it's hard. Listen, if I had it to do all over again, uh, and somebody had told me, all right, look, every dollar that you earn, starting in the 60s, 1970, just put it all in Berkshire Hathaway and forget about all this radical fluctuations in resources stocks. Just put every dollar you earn there. And then when Microsoft goes public, put half of it in there and forget about it and do something else with life that would be fun and productive. Yeah, yeah, I would have done it. At least I hope I would have been smart enough to do that if somebody told me that. But you got to be long-term oriented. And when you're a young guy just out of college with no money, I don't think you contemplate the fact that 50 years are going to go by. So
No, it's kind of the downside and the great advantage to youth, right? So you have this uninformed optimism about things. You're not yet cynical. You imagine you got to live for today. I mean, it's a really important part of civilization actually, is that you have young people with that short-term frame of mind, that are just want to live today.
yeah, there's no magic solutions. Although if it ever happens, if we ever finish writing that book or ever, well, forget about finish it, ever write the damn book about what a young man should do when most stupid young men go to college, uh, that provides a much better answer than magically finding the next Berkshire Hathaway, which is like looking for a needle in a haystack, or looking like actually, that's not even a good analogy. It's not like looking for a needle in a haystack. It's like looking for a needle in a stack of needles.
Right. It's like winning the lottery in a way. I mean, there's some
Yeah,
dumb luck involved with it that just doesn't make sense.
exactly. And anyway, we know what happens to most people that win the lottery. They blow themselves up, almost always.
Exactly. Exactly. And the odds of somebody having held, onto their, if they bought Berkshire in the 60s, them still holding onto their shares this whole time. I mean,
Slim, very
yeah,
slim, frankly.
yeah.
Yeah, too many opportunities to second guess yourself or take, yeah, it can happen, but not usually.
Okay. Just, well, one more last question for you, Doug. Question is, what gives Doug the most joy these days? What do you look forward to?
Well, it's very unfortunate, and I actually hate to admit this in public because it's kind of embarrassing, but I'm 78 fucking years old. And so I used to love playing polo and riding horses, but I'm not going to do that anymore because it's everybody gets hurt on horses eventually, even
Even,
so.
even you, even you.
Yeah, well, especially me. I
That's
certainly took my share of broken bones. Um, so I don't know. I guess I just enjoy a nice, mild August afternoon and going off to a nice restaurant, which I'm going to do shortly, for a pleasant lunch.
soft crab sandwich or
And
something.
getting some exercise. I like to do that, and that's very important. Certainly agree with Michael Yon about that. You don't want to become decrepit, and it's enjoyable staying in shape, even though it's painful when you're actually exercising, I've got to say. So I don't know. No magic answers. Like
Hmm.
I like listening to good movies, good videos, good music, which is not to say rap or hip hop, which is I find dissonant. I don't
I don't
know.
think anyone would have suspected you for a closet rap fan.
I don't think so. No, I'll have to think that out and come up with a better answer.
Yeah, I'd
I,
like to know.
yeah, nothing on the top of my head that I'm afraid I can't make a cosmic breakthrough on the subject at the moment.
Well, the most joy in my house these days is we've got this little lamb that we're
Oh
homing,
yeah.
raising. So it's a hilarious little thing. So for the time being, while it's still really small, gives a lot of joy.
I'm sorry I'm not in Uruguay, so I could see her. It's gotta be really touching and cute. A
It's totally
lamb with
ridiculous.
diapers running around the house. And
It's
and and
ridiculous.
and I mean it's like that, it's like the kids' nursery rhyme. Mary had a little lamb, followed her everywhere. I forget the rhyme, but that's what the lamb did. And I guess your lamb does that too.
For my daughter, yeah, it's like bonded with my daughter, and if my daughter is out of eyesight, she starts buying for her, like really kind of panics. So yeah, it's exactly like that. That nursery rhyme, there's a lot of truth in it. So
Yeah. I'm a dog fan, but I could be convinced to be a lamb fan as well, easily.
you like poodles? It's very similar. It's in terms of the coat. I mean, I don't know
Yeah,
about
oh yeah,
beyond that.
they look a lot alike. Exactly. You
Yeah,
could, if you had a flock of sheep, and your poodles could get lost among them. You couldn't find them because they
exactly.
look so much alike with their coats.
Yeah. All right. Well, I think we'll leave it there for today, Doug, and let you get to your soft crab sandwich you've got coming up, and we'll be back next week.
Fantastic, Matt. Thank you.
Thank you.